Did you know that some ancient cultures used giant stones as money, and these stones were so big they couldn't even move them? Or that there was a time when counterfeiting paper money in China could get you beheaded? The history of money is full of wild facts that most people have never heard of. It wasn't always gold and silver. At one point, people traded salt, and in parts of Africa, cowrie shells were the most valuable currency. Fast forward to today, where a single Bitcoin can be worth more than the annual income of entire villages. The way humans have exchange value has changed in ways you won't believe, from livestock to cryptocurrencies, and the future of money might be even crazier. Let's explore the surprising journey from barter to Bitcoin. Long before the invention of money, people got by through a system called barter, where you traded something you had for something you needed. Bartering dates back to around 6000 BC, with origins traced to Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, where goods like grain, animals, and metals served as a kind of proto-currency. A person with a surplus of, say, rice might trade with a neighbor who had extra livestock. This system worked when both parties wanted what the other had, a tricky thing called the double coincidence of wants. Imagine needing shoes but only having a cow to offer. If the cobbler didn't need a cow, you'd have to keep looking for or settle for something else you didn't really want. Bartering also didn't allow for standardized values, so people in different towns could want vastly different trades for similar items, making it tricky to determine fair rates. Over time, people began using items with inherent value as a form of early money. Think of rare shells, cocoa beans, and even salt, which was so valuable in ancient Rome that it was traded for essential goods, and the word salary actually comes from sal, the Latin word for salt. It was even used to pay Roman soldiers. Imagine working a whole month and receiving bags of salt instead of coins. These items, though, had uses outside of trade as well. Salt, for example, preserved food, and cocoa beans were even taxed in Mesoamerica. Salt and other commodities naturally became the first currency since they were widely valued. In other places, such as in early Egypt, grains like wheat and barley were used as currency, with transactions taking place right at the community granary. In medieval Europe, cattle served as a measure of wealth, but trading them wasn't easy. Just picture dragging a herd of cows across the countryside to get a barrel of mead. Some groups even use other unusual items like shells or beads to purchase goods. The Yap people in Micronesia took it a step further by using giant stone discs called rice stones. These stones, sometimes as large as 12 feet, were so heavy they couldn't even be moved, so ownership was simply agreed upon by the community. Shells, meanwhile, became popular currency in Africa and Asia, prized for their beauty and uniqueness. Some Native American tribes used beads made from shells called wampum, which became an accepted form of currency by European settlers in colonial America. By around 600 BCE, things got a little more official when the Kingdom of Lydia, in what's now Turkey, issued the first standardized coins. These coins were made up of electrum, a mix of gold and silver, and stamped with a lion's head, symbolizing royal authority. The Lydians were clever. They created coins of uniform weight and purity, which allowed people to trust their value instantly. This leap was revolutionary because, for the first time, coins represented a form of portable official money that could easily facilitate trade on a larger scale. These coins made trade more straightforward and less risky, as people no longer had to guess the worth of, say, a bag of salt versus a handful of gold. In a way, Lydian coins gave rise to a new social fabric because they reflected the authority of the kingdom, symbolizing trust between people and rulers. This concept spread fast, and within just a few generations, other empires like Persia and Greece adopted coinage. This simple invention laid the groundwork for a complex, interconnected economy. An ancient world that looked a bit more like ours, where value could travel and cross borders without having to lug along bags of salt or piles of seashells. Following the invention of coins, we saw the birth of paper money in China around 806 AD. This innovative approach was born out of a necessity. Carrying heavy coins was impractical for large transactions. Merchants began using paper promissory notes on the Silk Road, which eventually led to the first official paper money during the Song dynasty around 1023 AD. The Chinese even referred to it as flying money, designed for easy long-distance trade. One particularly mind-blowing fact is that Kublai Khan, the Mongol ruler, enforced paper money usage with a ruthless twist. He mandated that all traders accept it or face death. Imagine how scary that must have been. Traders had to comply, and the paper money system took off like wildfire. Marco Polo, the famous explorer, marveled at this efficiency in his travels. He wrote that the Chinese issued money with as much solemnity and authority as if they were pure gold or silver. As wars drained resources, the temptation to print more money led to inflation, making it worth less over time. So China actually experienced one of the world's first inflations in history. By the 15th century, the Ming Dynasty even decided to ban paper money altogether, reverting to coins and halting a burgeoning trade economy. Meanwhile, over in Europe, the banking system was evolving, albeit more slowly. The Knights Templar, known for their military prowess, also acted as early bankers. They allowed travelers to deposit their hard-earned money and issue documents that could be exchanged later on. This was a precursor to modern banking, but was far from the sophisticated systems we have today. Europe didn't actually introduce its own paper money until Sweden's Stockholm's Banco issued the first banknotes in the 17th century. Soon after, England's banks and Italy's Medici family adopted similar practices, making banking a safer and more convenient way to store and transfer wealth. This banking evolution set the foundation for modern finance, with banks issuing notes exchangeable for precious metals. But let's be honest, this leap into paper currency had its bumps along the road as well. The introduction of paper money often faced skepticism and, at times, outright rejection from traders and common folks alike. Imagine a time where nearly every dollar and coin could be traced back to a shiny brick of gold hidden away in a vault. The gold standard came to life in the 19th century, when countries agreed that each paper currency would be backed by a certain weight of gold. For instance, by the late 1800s, countries like the US and Britain set the value of their money directly to gold, making it possible for anyone to exchange a banknote for an actual gold coin. This system created stability and trust in money, but it also meant that global finance depended on how much gold a country had, literally linking economies to piles of metal hidden away in vaults. Soon the concept spread to the US, France, Germany, and others, creating a web of currencies with values tied to gold's weight, which made international trade smoother and more predictable. However, it came with strict limits. Governments couldn't simply print more money unless they had the gold to back it up, which kept inflation in check but also made economic flexibility difficult. This rigidity had some intense consequences. During the Great Depression, people panicked and started hoarding gold, which further strained the system. European nations dropped the gold standard in 1931, but the US held onto it until 1933 when President Franklin D. Roosevelt actually made it illegal for Americans to privately own gold. Imagine the shock. People had to turn their gold in for paper dollars at a set price, effectively forcing citizens to relinquish control over their personal gold. The government then raised the price of gold shortly after, allowing them to increase the money supply and help the economy stabilize. But trust was never fully restored. By 1971, President Nixon finally severed the dollar's link to gold altogether, ending the gold standard era and transitioning fully to fiat currency, where money's value no longer depended on physical resources. Did you know that in the wake of the switch to fiat, inflation rates soared? In the 1970s, the US experienced what's known as stagflation, where inflation and unemployment rose simultaneously. People were left wondering, what happened to our money? In fact, the average American saw their purchasing power erode dramatically over the decades, a reality many still feel today. After the US left the gold standard, the financial world shifted, and the way we handled money began to evolve at a rapid pace. Credit cards hit the scene, but many don't realize how revolutionary these small plastic rectangles were. Did you know that the first credit card started off as cardboard? The Diners Club kicked it off in the 1950s, making a card that only worked at a few New York restaurants. Fast forward, and by 1958, Bank of America launched its own credit card, Bank America Card, which is now known as Visa. They took a huge risk and even sent 60,000 cards to random people in Fresno, California without even asking. It was a mess at first, with fraud running wild and the bank losing millions. But it sparked a revolution in payment methods. Now, credit card usage is insane. Every second, there are around 10,000 credit card transactions worldwide, and the US alone has over 1.4 billion cards in circulation. If you stack them all, it would be like a 288-mile-high skyscraper of plastic. Besides convenience, credit cards introduced the revolving balance, which lets people carry debt month to month. It made credit cards more accessible but also turned cards into profit machines for banks. Today, the American banking industry makes over $30 billion a year just from credit cards, all thanks to interest fees, which can quickly pile up if you're not careful. Now jump ahead a few decades to Bitcoin. In 2008, a mysterious figure named Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper outlining the first cryptocurrency, meant to bypass banks entirely. Unlike regular money, Bitcoin runs on blockchain, a digital ledger where every transaction is publicly recorded but encrypted. Imagine a database where every entry can be checked but never altered, making it nearly impossible to counterfeit. What started as a niche idea amongst computer geeks exploded in value, attracting everyone from tech lovers to major investors. What's so fascinating is that some early crypto adopters made unbelievable fortunes, often by accident. Stories circulate about a college student who bought Bitcoin on a whim for a few bucks and forgot about it, only to realize years later he was a millionaire. But crypto's volatile nature also saw some lose everything just as quickly. Cryptocurrency remains controversial and hasn't yet replaced traditional money, but it's given people a glimpse into a financial system that's not controlled by any government or bank. The future of money is evolving rapidly, thanks to the explosive rise of digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and decentralized finance. Imagine a world where physical cash is a rarity and digital wallets dominate. This isn't as futuristic as it sounds. I mean, it's already happening. Countries like the Bahamas and Nigeria have introduced their own digital currencies, with China leading the charge on the renminbi. This digital form of money brings the potential for financial inclusion on a massive scale, helping those in remote regions access banking services with just a smartphone. Sub-Saharan Africa's mobile money platforms like M-Pesa are already transforming lives, showing us just how fast this future is unfolding. But digital currencies bring challenges as well. Central bank-issued digital money could completely reshape the role of traditional banks. In a digital world, would people even need bank accounts if they could hold a government-backed digital currency directly? And privacy is a big concern too. Unlike cash, every digital transaction leaves a trail. Could governments or corporations use that data for surveillance or monetization? People around the world are beginning to ask these questions as more digital currencies gain ground. In parallel, decentralized finances, or DeFi systems like Bitcoin and Ethereum offer a different future, one without traditional banks. Here, transactions happen directly between users, relying on blockchain technology for security. This is groundbreaking because it allows lending, borrowing, and saving outside of banks altogether. But it also comes with risks, like cybersecurity challenges and concerns over privacy, as every transaction leaves a digital footprint. So, could we soon see a cashless world where digital currencies are the norm? Will crypto take over, or will traditional systems evolve? What do you think the future of money looks like? If you're curious to know where money is headed next, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned on Mr. History.